Well, I am clearly having video storage issues. I'm going to keep posting these and you'll be able to pick up stuff still. Hopefully you saw the last, at least beginning of that rectangle, and I'm going to do the same thing to this one. I'm going to go with a little bit of a little bit stronger mix of still just peacock blue. When I say stronger, that means a little bit more pigment to water ratio. Can't see it, but there's quite a bit sort of pooled up here on the side of the palette, which is good because I'm going to want to make sure I have plenty of paint. So once again, I'm going to paint around that upper left rectangle. I could start here if I wanted. I could start here if I wanted, but I probably wouldn't start here or here. I am still starting up at the higher part of the shape that I'm going to paint, and with the help of holding it at an angle and our friend gravity, it's going to help us make this nice and even. I'm overlapping the pooling, that sort of line of pooling paint, also known as pigment, colored pigment and water. If I wanted, once again, if I wanted to just kind of make sure that things are kind of going evenly, I can always bring in a little bit more like that. I don't want to let that pooling line sit there for too long, because that will start staining. I'm halfway around wondering if I'm going to run out of a mix, which would be a good example of what not to do. But maybe a good example of why it's not a good thing to do. Yeah, it's interesting. This whole shape, it seems less like I've been having less pooling color and water than the red one. And I'm not sure if that's just sort of how I've mixed it. I think that's, yeah, that's, yes I am. I didn't mix enough. So if I start running out and I start trying to spread it a little bit too thin, I can start really leaning into the brush to try to get all the color and water and paint out of the brush and to cover the shape. And when I do that, what I will also unfortunately be doing is lifting up some of that the first layer. I think I'm just going to make it here, but note to self, mix up more next time. Enough for you and a friend. And like I think I said, if I really started laying in with the brush, trying to get it to come out, it will this is a good example. It will and I'm not going to panic. It will start scrubbing up lower layers. So you could tell I started kind of, because I was trying to keep it a little bit thinner. I have created a little situation where it's drying a little bit unevenly. There was sort of so it's not going to dry with a completely clean wash, and that's partly because I just didn't have plenty to do. So at this point, I can either just let it dry, or like hopefully you've seen me do before, I might just say, I care enough about this whole shape that that I want it to dry cleanly. So I'm gonna, even though it's fairly dry up here, it's not all the way dry. So if I come in and reestablish over this whole shape what is wet and what is not wet, I can eventually make it so that all the water will move around the shape in a way that will shift around all the pigment in a clean and even fashion. This can be a bit scary, and it can also be a bit unnecessary. So it's something I definitely enjoy using in the right situation, but it has a way of sort of introducing a lot more kind of fussing with the whole thing, and that can sort of make it look like something that's fussed with. What's interesting is that it can also make it quite beautiful, so it gets to be a bit of a judgment call. It's a little bit too dry right there, so it's not wanting to move. When I am dripping in watery paint from my brush, I do want to make sure that I'm holding it perpendicular to the paper. See, that was too much water. So yeah, a good example of why to have enough paint in the first place, enough color mixed up in the first place. And when I saw I was sort of running out, I could have slowed down and tried to mix up a little bit more. That's pretty tricky to do, to mix up some paint that's it's going to be at the exact right concentration of paint and ratio of water to paint. There's a couple other things going on, but I'm going to pause and dry it and go to the next step.